Welcome. Before we begin, please be aware that our discussions on mental health issues may include sensitive topics and situations that could be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised, and if you find these subjects distressing, we encourage you to seek support or skip episodes that may be uncomfortable for you. Your well-being is important to us.
Hey guys, so today is going to be just me. Again, it's been one of those times where it's been a while since I've come on and done one of my own episodes. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as well as being Autism Awareness Month and PMDD Awareness Month. So April is pretty big for me. I've spent the first half of this month really just trying to post and advocate and bring awareness to all three of those things, actually, as they are all things that I have experienced or am currently experiencing or living with. So, as many of you know, if you've listened to my previous episodes, I am a survivor of sexual assault, rape, childhood sexual assault, many different forms or titles of sex crimes I have been the survivor of. So, Sexual Assault Awareness Month is huge for me, and that is mainly what I will be speaking on today. But I also do have autism. I'm actually ADHD, so I have autism and ADHD. And I also live with PMDD. So this month is a lot. It's a lot of advocacy. It's been really awesome. I've been trying almost every day to post at least on Facebook, if not on my Instagram as well. Statistics, just different ways to advocate for sexual assault awareness specifically. And, I've just been sharing statuses from my friends. I have a couple friends that are autistic or neurodivergent as well, or also live with PMDD. So if I haven't had the opportunity to post myself, I've been sharing their posts and just, really trying to get people talking about these things that affect so many of us and are incredibly important. But yeah, so like I said, today we're mainly going to be talking about sexual assault awareness. So I did try to record once before, and I was actually going to upload what I had just, recorded prior, but I didn't feel like I said everything that I really needed to say or I wanted to say. So I'm redoing it a little bit, but I really want to kind of go into what I've been through, the magnitude of what I've been through, the different forms, some of the struggles, some of them like memories, not of the events themselves, but really awesome things that happened amongst these bad things that kind of stick out to me. And then I want to kind of go over, how I coped and how I recovered and how I healed from it and some of the things that I still, live with today because, as many of us know, healing is not linear and a lot of traumas leave permanent scars that you kind of always have to be working through. So yeah. Let's get started. This is actually a topic that has become pretty easy for me to talk about. I don't feel shame for any of the things that were done to me, as I understand that they were done to me, and I don't like to say that I am the victim, because I consider myself a survivor, really a thriver after trauma, but in the case of the assault and or the crime, I am the victim in this scenario, and so I no longer hold any shame for those things. And this conversation might be really heavy for some people to hear, or they might be shocked at how nonchalant I can recount the things that were done to me. So I just want to kind of put a disclaimer to understand that this is not something I take lightly, and if at any point, I know I have a trigger warning at the beginning of all my episodes, but if at any point this becomes uncomfortable or triggering or just kind of shocking to listen to, feel free to pause, take some time for yourself. If you can't finish the episode, I completely understand. I will not take it personally. Please always put your mental and emotional well-being first. So, with that being said, we're going to kind of start from as early as I can remember. So we'll start with my childhood sexual abuse. So, for the longest time, I kind of figured that my childhood sexual abuse started at the age of 6 because it was the earliest age I could remember being assaulted. I have been abused in childhood by more than one person. So I was victimized by my father consecutively from a very young age until about 12. When I recount the age span of my childhood sexual abuse, I go to 14 because I was still being abused by other people to that age. And honestly, it wasn't until recently that I realized I was really sexually abused all the way up until the legal age of 18 of adulthood, as I was statutory raped on multiple occasions. And I didn't really come to terms with that until recently because in my mind, mentally and emotionally, from 15 to 18, I already considered myself an adult, especially because of the trauma that I had suffered. It had aged me. And so I kind of, for a very long time, I struggled with shame for the older portion because I thought that that was my choice. I thought that I was promiscuous. And it didn't help that, like, family members and friends would refer to me as promiscuous or slutty, and they would make really derogatory comments. And so I never really realized that the sexual encounters that I was having as a teenager, I thought was consensual. It really was working with a therapist, and as an adult and parent now, being able to look back and say, you can't consent at 14, 15, 16, 17, even 18, when that person is much, much, much older than you. We're not talking about sexual encounters with people that were my same age. We're talking about sexual encounters with men that were in their 30s or 40s, sometimes even older. But to backpedal a little bit, in early childhood, I was sexually abused by my oldest brother at the age of 6. And so, for the longest time in my mind, I thought that was the earliest time I'd ever been sexually abused. I forgot about this sexual abuse, this one incident, until I was 12. And I have actually written about this in my book, but my book is not yet published, so I will tell you the story here as well. Our minds tend to, they know what we can handle. And so a lot of times, especially with children, if you've been through a very traumatic situation or incident, our minds will actually make us forget that because they know that we cannot handle remembering. So I didn't remember for years until I was 12, and I remember just waking up one day and having this memory, and at first I thought it was a dream. I was like, did I dream that? But it felt so incredibly real, and I could recall everything as if it had just happened. I do have a photographic memory. I have a very realistic memory. When I recall memories, I'm able to hear, see, feel, smell everything in the memory as if it is still happening or has just happened. And so with this memory, like, I woke up, but because it was in the morning, I thought maybe I just dreamt it, and it was and it was just a really, really realistic dream. So I held on to it for a couple of days, but the longer I held on to it, the more clear what happened became to me. And the realization of this memory was like addressing it with my mother, and of course my sister was present as well, especially at this time. My oldest brother is 10 years older than me. My second brother is 8 years older than me. And so, like, they were out of the house doing their own things by the time I was 12. So it was usually me, my mom, and my sister that were like, we were always together. We were homeschooled. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So anytime that I really talked to my mom about anything, my sister was usually present, and vice versa. But yeah, we were in our minivan, and I can remember this memory of asking her about this incident just as clearly as I can remember the incident. So I'll try to paint a picture for you guys. I was in our minivan, and my mom was driving, and my sister was in the front passenger seat, and I was in the back seat. And I was like on the edge. They were captain's chairs. It wasn't a bench seat. So I was like on the edge of my seat so that I was leaned forward, and I had my right arm and my left arm like leaning on the shoulders of the two front seats and kind of like leaning forward into the front seat. And so that I could be closer to them while talking to them and be kind of a part of the conversation that was going on. I remember Z88.3, which is a Christian radio station for anyone that's not aware, was playing in the background, and it was like what was always on in the car. It's what we always listened to. And I can hear them talking, but I don't really remember what they were talking about. I think they might have been talking about family, and so that's kind of where I broached the subject. And I just told my mom I had a question, and she was like, yeah, what's up? And I said, has Cody ever done anything to me? And she paused, and she said, like, I swear to God, the radio was still playing, but like it could have been dead silent in this van. And she was like, why do you ask that? And I was like, because I've remembered something, I think, but I don't know if it really happened or if it was just a dream. And she said, well, what are you remembering? And so I recounted to her this memory, and she confirmed that it did happen. And what's crazy is that I don't just remember the incident. I remember her addressing the incident afterwards. And I remembered both of those things at the same time. And so the memory is, of course, of the incident that happened with my brother. So we were all very close, even with the age gap. So when I was 16, my oldest brother would have been... when I was 6, my oldest brother would have been 16. But we all were still really close. That we all lived at home. And we would frequently have sleepovers. If not in like our bedroom, like out in the living room. So the night that this incident happened, we were all on the floor of the bedroom that me and my sister shared. And again, really quick heads up, I don't go into super, what is the word I'm looking for here? Graphic detail, but I am recounting a incident of assault. So if you are not in a place to listen to that, please skip now and come back in like 2 to 5 minutes. So yeah, we were all on the floor of my childhood bedroom. Me and my sister shared a bedroom, and my older 2 brothers shared a bedroom. And we were stacked like Pringles. So we were all like sleeping on the same side. We were all sleeping on our left side facing our bedroom door, which was partially open. And my oldest brother was behind me, and I was in front of him, and then my sister was in front of me, and then my second older brother was in front of her. So we were stacked like little spoons, all 4 of us, with my younger brother being closest to the bedroom door. So my older brother was behind me, and he assaulted me or molested me, however you want to call it, by making me touch him. So he had grabbed my hand and used me. And I remember this night so vividly. I remember the carpet in our bedroom. It was like this typical 90s carpet that had... It was supposed to be maroon, but it had all these little colors like weaved into it. So especially if you were down on the ground, you could like see all of those different colors in each little tuft. And I remember just staring at the carpet. and seeing all of these different colors that worked together to make the bigger picture. And I remember like looking towards my bedroom door and seeing that it was partially open, and seeing the light that was cast into the bedroom from a lamp that was on in the living room, and just like wanting to scream out, wanting to ask for help, wanting to tell him to stop. But I was frozen. And especially in children, but I really want to validate adults as well who are assaulted or raped, freeze is a completely valid response to trauma. People don't always fight. People don't always flight. They also freeze. And that is valid. You are not wrong for that. With that being said, that's what I did. I froze, and I didn't say anything until I believe it was the next morning. And I cannot remember if I told my sister, who then went and told my mother, because I definitely, when it came to things like this, was more comfortable telling my sister, and my sister would speak for me. She was 2 years older than me, so a lot of times she was like my advocate. Which, this is like an aha moment I had recently, because I already felt like that at 6, which should tell me and others that by the time I was 6, I was already confiding things to my sister that were happening. But that didn't dawn on me until I was an adult, and was like, why was I already comfortable telling my sister instead of my mom? That means that before the age of 6, things were already happening. With that being said, I can then recount my mother addressing the issue. And she handled this in a way that I don't believe that I would, especially as a mother myself. So again, to paint a picture, the way our house was, there was a back hallway, and directly at the end of that hallway was a door, and that was my brother's bedroom. To the right was me and my sister's bedroom, and to the left was the hallway bathroom. But the end door, my brother's door, and me and my sister's bedroom door, they actually touched in the corner, whereas the bathroom was a little bit like further down the wall in the hallway. So like if the bedroom doors were open and you were standing in the doorway of my bedroom, you could see the entirety of my brother's bedrooms. So I was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and my mother was standing in the doorway of my brother's bedroom, but she was standing against the left wall, so she wasn't blocking my view. My oldest brother was sitting on the end of his bed facing me, but he wasn't looking at me. My second brother was sitting at a desk with his back turned to the situation. I don't know if he was listening or not. I'm sure he probably didn't want to really be a part of this. And then my older sister was standing in my brother's bedroom up against the wall facing my older brother. So she had this conversation with my older brother, asking him if he did this to me, with all of her children present. And like my older sister knew, because I do believe that I confided in her first before going to my mom. But I don't really know why my second brother was present for this. I don't really feel like as a child himself, he would have been 14. I don't really know why he was involved in this conversation. Afterwards, if it needed to be brought up as to an explanation of like why this happened or why that happened, that I could understand, but I don't really know why she handled this the way she did. That being said, I don't really know why my mom handled anything the way she did in our household, because it is a recurring pattern that she doesn't really protect or prevent or anything of the sort. So I just remember like my older brother not really wanting to meet my eye, but I do remember my mom saying like, hey, did you do this? This is what I've heard. And him just like, he did look up and meet my eye then, and then he looked at my mom and he's like bawling and he's like, yes, I did. And I don't remember anything past that point. I don't remember how that conversation ended. What I do know is that nothing in our home changed. If she like had to run out to the store, she would still leave me and my sister with our two older brothers, and my oldest brother was still technically the one in charge. He didn't go to therapy. I didn't go to therapy. Nobody went to therapy. Like, he didn't go to a doctor. Like, no intervention happened. Nothing changed. And we just went back to life as normal. And I think because I forgot, I tucked it away, that definitely aided in life going back to normal. Because I remember after that, like, being very close with my older brother still, hugging him still, like, hanging out with him still. So nothing changed. And so that is the trauma specifically related to him. And then, as I referenced in the beginning of this episode, I was also sexually abused by my father. And I thought that started around like 9 or 10. I just, like, it got worse and worse. It went from looks to comments to touching. And, again, my mom knew. I mean, there's one incident that I reference a lot where I was about 10 and I was sitting on his tailgate. We grew up in the country on a farm, and so a lot of times if he was out in his workshop, I would be sitting on his tailgate of his truck and just, like, hanging out with him. He favorited me a lot, which now I can recognize as grooming. And in the evenings, he would usually be drunk or on his way to drunk. And so I was sitting out there, talking to him, and he'd, like, gotten closer to me and was slurring his words. And I don't really remember what he was saying at this point, but I was wearing a jean skirt, and it wasn't like a mini skirt. It went almost to my knee. And so when I was sitting down, it probably came to, like, mid-thigh. And he put his hand on my knee. And I remember just staring down at it, like, why are you touching my knee? Like, this is not a way a dad touches his daughter. And then he slid his hand up my skirt. And he made it to, like, the end of his fingers, so, like, his knuckles. So, like, half his hand got up my skirt before I jumped down off of the tailgate and ran into my house. And because I ran in, my mom was coming out of her bedroom at the same time. She seen me running, and she's like, whoa, 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 what's happening? And I told her immediately. I was like, Dad just tried to put his hand up my skirt. And she believed me. She got very upset. But she didn't do anything. She didn't go outside. She continued cooking dinner. I know she didn't verbally address it with him because there would have been a screaming match. They had screaming matches on a regular basis anyways over stupid things, especially when he was drunk. I mean, it was a very volatile household. So I know that even if she had, like, say, waited until the children went to bed, right? Because as a parent, I can say, you know, when you're having a serious conversation, you try to not do it in front of the kids. Even if she had waited until we were all in bed, they would have screamed to the point that it woke us up. I mean, they used to scream to the point it woke us up about things like not reheating his dinner. So if she had accused him of what I accused him of, I know all hell would have broken loose. So I know for a fact my mom never did anything about this very, very real risk, and not even risk, actual inappropriate behavior. And then things happened, like, I will reference how close my mom was to me and my sister and how she really treated us more like friends than she did daughters, especially my sister, because she favorited my sister. And I will explain that my mom really had no friends, and so especially being in an abusive relationship, an abusive marriage, I think she emotionally needed friends. And so, not that it's okay, but so she started treating her daughters like her friends. And so she would share things with us that were like, why are you telling us this? Especially at this age. And now, looking back, I'm glad some of the things she shared, she did, because they answer questions I have about my abuse or about her part in my abuse. But as a mom, I'm looking back like, why did you confess to your 16-year-old daughter that you knew her father was inappropriate with her and you did nothing? Like, why do you say that? Like, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you want to go with me? Like, it should not be treated the same. However, it was. I know for a fact that in my teen years, during conversations about my father and about the things that had happened to me already, she had confessed that she knew from before the skirt incident that he had attraction to me. because she would see him looking at me in ways that were inappropriate. And one of the examples that she gave was she would catch him looking down my shirt. Specifically, the way our house was set up, if you were opening the oven to put something in it and the other person was sitting on the couch in the living room, you would be able to see down their shirt because of how those two rooms were connected. They were open. It was an open floor plan. And the couch faced the opposite direction of the oven. So she would say, like, if I bent over to put something in the oven, because even at 9 and 10, I cooked a lot, she would watch him look down my shirt and not avert his gaze. It's also important to point out that by the age of 9, I had double D's. So I developed very, very quickly, and this is something my father honed in on. So at 16, my mom is admitting that she knew there was inappropriate attraction there, and she didn't do anything about it. So obviously, if at 8, 9, 10, he's looking down my shirt, and then at 10 and 11, he's putting his hand up my skirt, like, it's progressing, it's getting worse. You should have intervened when you seen him looking down my shirt. But you didn't, and you should have intervened when my brother abused me. But you didn't. And then you should have intervened when he put his hand up my skirt. But you didn't. And my father would go on to molest me. And that is something I struggled with saying publicly for a very, very long time. Because as a victim, and as how my family brainwashed me, I felt like I was ruining his reputation. I would ruin his chances at a good life. I would ruin his relationships with his other children. I would ruin his ability to have a relationship with his grandkids. And so I stayed silent and I pretended like nothing happened. For years and years, I would see my dad and I would tell him I loved him and I would hug him and I would hang out with him at family events. Even after the abuse stopped, even after I became an adult and had a child myself, I kept this a secret. And so when I finally did speak out about it, I did get the typical victim blaming and being told that it didn't happen and that I was lying. And if you haven't been through it, or you're not someone that has the ability to understand, many people do not understand how victims, 1, don't ever say anything, or 2, can continue on a relationship with their abuser as if nothing happened. I'm not going to try to excuse it. I know why. If you don't, go educate yourself. That's all I'm going to say about that. I did the same thing with my brother. I was able to continue a relationship with him. I actually went on later in life to babysit his children. Like, we all got together for family birthday parties and Thanksgivings and Christmas, and I'd hug him and told him I loved him and I wanted a relationship with him, even though he'd molested me as a child. Like, it's just a part of how I was raised, and thinking that I automatically had to forgive them and continue a relationship with them for their benefit. Because what I was taught from a very, very young age, from the very beginning, was that my needs and wants and boundaries came absolutely last. Katelyn did not matter, even over her other siblings, not just over her, her parents. I came last. And there would be one incident where my mother would get really, really protective of me, and I never understood this because of how she obviously was not protective. And this is one that is like, whoa. I remember the first time I shared this story wasn't even intentionally. I had been writing in my online journal, and I'd taken a picture of it to post about how journaling is so therapeutic, and I didn't realize that you could actually read the words on my screen. And one of my cousins from my father's side seen it and told me I was a piece of shit and that I needed to take it down because there was no way her uncle could ever do something like this. Mind you, she hadn't had a close relationship with my father since she was a child herself. But people just really have that ideology that because of who the person is to them, they couldn't be a monster. He's your uncle, he's my father. We live in 2 different states. Who he is here and who he is behind closed doors could be an entirely different person. And I think the more that people listen to true crime and the more people listen about serial killers and things like that, the more people are starting to realize that people can fake it really, really well, especially abusers. And this is a theme with my dad. He owned his own business. He was really friendly. His neighbors loved him. And so not even my own abuse, but say like when my parents got divorced and my mom was explaining, because people are like, well, why are you getting divorced? And she would tell them, like, he's abusive. He's an alcoholic. Like, he tried to beat the shit out of me. He's been threatening to beat the shit out of the kids for years and punching walls and breaking shit. Like, you know, very abusive. People were like, what? No, not him. Like, he's an amazing guy. He'd give you the shirt off his back. And I'm like, yeah, he'd give you the shirt off his back and he'd beat the shit out of his wife. Like, that's just how it is a lot of times, you know? And so I didn't speak about this, especially after that, like that incident being shared accidentally and getting such a negative reaction to it. I kept it quiet. But this incident, now I'm going to explain it. So again, possibly triggering to people if you don't want to hear this. Nothing physical actually happens, but the scenario of what was intended to happen may be triggering. Please skip forward. Nearby where we lived, there was a fish camp. And for those who don't know, generally fish camps are like where there's a boat dock and a shop where they sell bait and fishing equipment and snacks and things of that sort. This, very country living, by the way. This fish camp not only had those things, but it also had a shop where they worked on like sea-doos and boats and small automobiles like mopeds and scooters and things like that. But it also was a rental property. So there was, I'd probably say about 20 trailers, mobile homes on the property. And the man that owned this fish camp was really good friends with my dad. And his son, he had a son the same age as me. Me and him were very close. And I actually had a crush on him for a really long time, but we were just really good friends, you know? And so whenever my dad would go down to this fish camp, I would go with him, and me and his friend's son would hang out. And we used this boat dock a lot. It was a boat dock literally right around the corner from our house. And so, you know, growing up in the summer, we were on the boat almost every weekend, if not more frequently. And so I was very familiar with this place. And my mom always told me that she wasn't really comfortable with me being down there and hanging out in the shop because it just wasn't a place for a young girl. There was a lot of, you know, men down there, grown men, very questionable, crude men. I was hearing things that she didn't think I should be hearing, certain subjects and conversations. And, you know, now it's kind of ironic because it's like, unbeknownst to her, I was not innocent by the time I was 13 or 14. I'd been being sexually abused for years. So these men weren't really talking about much that I didn't know about. Not to say that I, you know, still shouldn't have been there, but yeah. So the incident that happened was that we already had a boat, but it was a smaller boat, and there was a boat that was docked at this, place that was for sale and had been for a while, and it was a pontoon, and my dad really, really wanted it. And we couldn't afford it. I mean, my dad worked for himself. He did have a good business. He made good money, but my mom was a stay-at-home mom. There were 4, sometimes 5 kids in the house. Like, we didn't have a lot of money to be throwing away. Anything that we had that was nice was because my dad worked really hard for it. So we wouldn't just hang out at the shop. We would also hang out at his friend's house. And one night in particular, we were all hanging out, and it was just like, there was a really weird vibe there anyways. I remember sitting around the little dinette table with them, and somehow, like, the conversation about weight and, like, what a woman should weigh had come up. And I wasn't a small child. So by the time I was about 13, I think I weighed like 150 pounds, and I was already being told by doctors that I was morbidly obese. So I brought that up. I was like, I'm 150 pounds. And my dad's friend was like, there's no way. And there just so happened to be a scale in the dining room of all places in this house. Not sure why. And I was like a very stubborn person, especially when it came to like feminist stuff. So hearing them be sexist, I was adamant that I weighed what I said I weighed, and there was nothing wrong with that, and I would get on that scale right then and there to prove it. It's just weird. Like, what man and his male friend have this conversation with a 13-year-old girl? It was just really questionable. Really weird feel in the air. My friend was also being really weird. He kept, like, pulling me into his room to kind of try to separate me from my dad and his dad. And I remember at the time actually being nervous because I had such a crush on him and was so sexually traumatized at that point that I thought he was going to try to make a move on me, and I didn't want that because I just wanted to be friends with him. And if anything more was to happen, I wanted it to be like real feelings, you know? I didn't want to just be sexual with this person. But because of what I'd been through already at the age of 13, I really thought that the only purpose men would see in me was sex. So I just remember like sitting in his room with him and being really, really uncomfortable and really on edge and trying to pretend like I wasn't. And at one point, my dad came in and he said that his friend was inviting me to stay for dinner. And it didn't hit me at first that he said me and not us. And I was like, okay, yeah, we'll stay for dinner. And he's like, well, let me call your mom and make sure she's okay with it. Make sure she hasn't made like a big dinner that she wants us to be home for. And I was like, okay. So he called my mom and they talked for a little bit. And I just remember her being like really uncomfortable, like really hesitant, but then finally agreeing. And then he was like, well, she wants to talk to you. And I was like, okay. So I got on the phone with her. And again, she was like really hesitant, but she was like, just dinner. And then I want you to come back, you know? And I was like, okay, cool. And then my dad got back on the phone and he actually stepped outside. And now I know that he did this because he was going to have a conversation with her that he didn't even want me hearing like his side of the conversation. What happened was, and I found out this by my mom later on, that when he'd stepped outside, she had changed her mind again and was like, no, I don't want her staying there. I don't want y'all staying there. I really don't even like that she's in his house. Like, he makes me really uncomfortable. I just come home. Just bring her home. And, but he came back in and was like, okay, it's all good. And he's like, I'm going to hang out for about 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to leave. And unbeknownst to me, what he was doing was killing time to allow his friend more time. So, unbeknownst to me, what my father and his friend had agreed to was that if his friend could have his way with me, he would give my dad the boat. It would be a trade. So there would be no money exchanged, just me and the boat. And this still, like, amazes me to this day that this is something I don't know who brought it up. I don't know if it was his friend or him, like, again, I'm going to reference true crime and how so many people that study true crime are always amazed at how evil people find each other. I cannot wrap my head around how you would broach the subject of child molestation or rape and know, or at least hope, that the other person would be okay with it. I don't know how these two men came together and knew that they could make this deal and they would both be okay or open to the idea. I still cannot fathom that. However, at whatever point they'd had this conversation, my friend, the guy's son, had overheard it. So he knew what was going to go down this night, and that's why he was trying to protect me. My dad left, and the way this guy's house was set up, you walk in the front door to the living room, and then there's a wall, and on the other side of that wall there's a kitchen. And in the kitchen is a door that goes to the back porch to the backyard. So you have to go through the living room and through the kitchen to get to that back door. To the left of the living room, there was a hallway that went down to a bathroom, a laundry room, and his dad's bedroom. His dad had been in the kitchen, and we were now in the living room because I'd said goodbye to my dad and walked him to the front door. And my friend was really, really on edge, and he was just watching the doorway to the kitchen, just like would not take his eyes off of it. And he's sitting down on the couch with me, and he leaned over and he said, "When I get up, grab my hand and follow me. Don't ask questions." So he continued to watch. His dad came out of the kitchen and he walked down the hallway, and my friend got up and he grabbed my hand and he walked close enough to the hallway to see which room his dad had went in and if any of the doors were open. His dad had went in his bedroom and shut the door, and my friend made a beeline. I mean, I've never seen someone start moving so quickly, and he bolted for the back door. To make a long story short, that friend took me out the back door. We ran because now we know he can hear us. And I still don't know what the fuck is going on. I'm just listening to my friend because something doesn't feel right and he's clearly panicked. So my friend ends up taking me into the woods, and we run into the woods. He knows that his dad wouldn't chase us. He's not in the condition to chase us anyways. But we stayed hidden in those woods until I could hear and see my mom's car approaching. Because the road that led to this fish camp was a 2-lane street out in the country, so you could hear a car when it was coming, and I was already traumatized enough that I could recognize my parents' vehicles by their sound. So when I heard it coming, I poked my head out around from behind a tree enough to see that it was my mom approaching. So I, went out, and he said goodbye to me and stayed in the woods, and I got in the car with my mom, and I just remember, before I actually got in the car with my mom, she'd rolled the window down. She was like, "Get the fuck in the van." And my mom never cussed. My mom didn't start cussing until later on in my teenage years, so I knew something was really wrong. I got in the van, and she was like, "I'm so sorry. You weren't supposed to stay here. I told him not to leave you there by yourself. I told him I didn't even want y'all having dinner here." And so later on, what she told me was that as soon as he'd pulled into our yard and she seen that I wasn't in the pickup truck with him, she flipped the fuck out and was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Where is Katelyn?" And then she just grabbed her keys and jumped in the van to come get me. And it just blows my mind. First of all, let me just take the time to say to that friend, if you know who you are, if you remember this incident, and there's enough context clues to know who I'm speaking to, thank you so fucking much. I have never forgotten what you did. At 13, you made the decision to be a good person. At 13, I know that you were being raised by a piece of shit who had made you... he put this kid in situations where he had pornography available to him. He watched him assault other women. He watched his dad be abusive to women. He was raised in a really, really shitty environment that could have also formed his young mind to be a shitty person. My friend could have taken advantage of the situation and also abused me, and he didn't. He was a good person. He still is a good person. And I am so, so, so fucking thankful that at 13 you made the decision to protect me and to get me out of that situation and to protect me from your own father. And I will forever be grateful to you for that. But I don't understand why this is a situation where my mom finally decided to be protective. Why this? Because it was a different man. My father had been sexually abusing me for years. My brother had sexually abused me. And unbeknownst to my mom, other friends of my father had sexually abused me. Why was this really the first and only time you were so visibly protective of me? I have asked my mom this question in recent years, and I don't really get a straight answer. There's no clarification. So that may be something that I always wonder. So that's my, really that's my childhood sexual abuse. As I said, I would go on in my teenage years to rebel really, really hard. I would make an online dating profile at the age of 13 on Plenty of Fish, which statistically, at least in the state of Florida, according to law enforcement, is the #1 dating site used for pedophiles to find underage children. And of course, that is the first dating profile I created. I didn't know those things, but yeah, I am really, really lucky that worse did not happen to me. I won't even say lucky because I don't believe in luck. I am divinely protected that worse did not happen to me. Yes, obviously, I suffered statutory rape, and I suffered rape, and really, really bad traumas, but I should be dead a couple times over. I should have had much, much more violent things happen to me, and they never did, and for that I am incredibly thankful. I would go on in my, I want to say 16th year to consecutively sneak out every single night until I finally got caught, and every single one of those nights I was meeting up either with repeat people or new people and engaging in activities that I should not be. So there was a lot of not only emotional and sexual trauma, but obviously sexual is related to our bodies, but I held all of that trauma in my physical body for so many years and didn't realize that I had held on to it. That it was so detrimental to a lot of things that ended up impacting further relationships into adulthood and my self-esteem and my confidence and my self-worth, obviously. Yeah, I finally got caught. I'd been sneaking out. My sister had come in my room to borrow a jacket on her way to work and realized I wasn't there. I had accidentally fallen asleep at a man's house. And didn't wake up until 8:30 in the morning and had 63 missed calls from my mom, my oldest brother, my sister, and my dad, who were all looking for me. And my mom told me she was pretty sure that morning she was going to find me in a ditch somewhere. I had went to the home of a 37-year-old man who I had convinced that I was 21. And we were dating. This was the third time I had been to his house. We'd met on multiple occasions. I do, even now as an adult, fully believe he did think that I was a young adult. I could pass for that. Now, when I was 13, obviously I couldn't pass as an adult, but at 16, 17, I did look like I was in my early 20s. And people are just really, really naive. I say for this man that I really do believe he thought I was an adult because he introduced me to family. Things that I think if he knew I was lying about my age and was engaging in pedophilic activities, he would not have done. He wouldn't have taken that risk. And in my teenage years, I would suffer a miscarriage that was the result of a rape. In adulthood, I would go on to be sexually assaulted on numerous occasions. I would be raped. I would suffer, not legal spousal rape because we weren't legally married, but I don't remember the term for it. It's like romantic abuse or something like that, where you are being sexually assaulted or raped by your romantic partner. I don't really know why it has a different term, because rape is rape. But I suppose because it's more, not more complex, but it's just different because you know this person, you're in a relationship with them. It's just a different experience. I actually would be assaulted by multiple partners over different years. And one of the statistics that I had shared at the beginning of April is that children that have been the victim of childhood sexual abuse are far, far more likely to be re-victimized later in their life as adults. And that proved true for me. I didn't always make the wisest decisions. I didn't always put myself in the best situations, but I am still not to blame for the things that other people did to me. And that took me a really, really long time to realize. All of this abuse really messed with me. I thought that I was sick. I thought that I needed help. I thought I needed treatment. Even for the things that my brother and my dad did to me. I thought somehow I was at fault for it. Or at least that now, because they'd done it to me, I was unworthy, I was disgusting. No one would ever want me if they knew. And then because of how sexually active I was in my teenage years, I suffered a lot because of the narrative of slut shaming and body count and all that. I would always use humor as a coping mechanism. I would joke about how I didn't know how many bodies I had and how it doesn't matter. And I fully do still believe that. I don't think the number of sexual partners that people have is important, and the fact that that is always aimed to women is extremely misogynistic. But I would joke about it on a regular basis or anytime I had a new romantic partner because I was still ashamed of not knowing and feeling like I didn't own my body in that sense. Another one of the posts that I have shared in April is about that, is about how all of this abuse has affected me and how I was so ashamed and I physically hated my body. Not the way it looks. I have struggled with that as well, but I just hated my body. I knew that this was a body that had been abused. And that is something that you will hear victims of sexual assault talk about, how we kind of want out of our own skin because we feel disgust. And I felt that for a really, really long time. I actually would self-harm in my teen years. I would participate in like self-harming behavior such as like alcoholism and, well, being a hypersexual. And actually like backpedaling a little bit, in my childhood, my young childhood, I would attempt suicide 3 times. So I very much hated myself. I very much internalized everything that was being done to me as a problem with me. And it really wasn't until I was an adult that I was able to heal from these things. For reference, I am now 27. I will be 28 in August. And so that only gives me about 8 years. And I know from a lot of this, I didn't really even start healing until about 21, 22. That's really when I started seeing a therapist and getting on medication. The majority of my healing has been within the last 3 years. Very heavy healing in the last year and a half. It was not overnight. It is not linear. I still deal with ramifications from this abuse. I don't have a relationship with anyone in my immediate family. I went no contact with my mom and my sister. I know I've referenced that in my last episode, but I cut my dad out of my life a couple years ago. My oldest brother, cut me out of his life a couple years ago. I technically still have communication with my middle brother, my middle sibling, but we don't talk. We're just on each other's Facebooks. I don't even know if he knows about what I'm doing. I don't know if he's listened. I don't know how he feels about it. And I don't really care. I feel for him because he was also a victim of our circumstances and possibly a victim of more. I don't know. But this is my story, and I've finally claimed the power of telling it no matter how it may affect friends or family, because they were not the victim. I still struggle with my self-esteem. I mean, I'm sure you could hear it in my voice when I was referencing how I felt about my body and the self-harm that I practiced for so many years. I still have moments where I feel gross. I still have to use tools to tell myself that I'm worthy. I still have to do affirmations. I used the scientific aspect of every 7 years you have a whole new body because you've shed so many skin cells. I've used that multiple times to affirm with myself that I have a body that has no longer been abused. I have a body that's no longer been abused, and being able to feel that power. But even if that wasn't a fact, knowing that my body is still worthy physically, it is still worthy emotionally, it is still worthy spiritually, I am still worthy in all of those senses. I still go to therapy regularly. I was on anxiety medication for a really long time. I've done yoga, I've done meditation, I've done journaling. All of the things that I've referenced in other episodes are not just a means of healing from my abuse in adulthood. It's a means to heal from the abuse I suffered as a child and as a young adult. And then recently I also started hypnotherapy. So I'm really doing all the things. And that's not because one particular thing didn't work. I just want to heal myself as completely as I can. And also give myself the grace that it's not linear, and I'm going to have good days and I'm going to have bad days, and I'm going to occasionally have things that trigger, and that's okay. I'm really, really focusing on healing my inner child. She had no one protected her. She was very alone. And in some aspects, every single one of the members of my immediate family was abusive to me, if not sexually or physically, emotionally, and verbally. And just needing to heal her. And so I wanted to, that was something I didn't really address in the first time I tried to record this. I addressed what I'd been through and that I'm okay now, but I didn't really talk about what life looks like for me now as a victim of all those things. You know, I am healed. I do have a very happy, healthy sex life with my husband, and I'm able to love myself and in all the ways, emotionally, mentally, physically. What I look like and just being in my body, I now feel empowered. I own my body, and I am modest when I want to be, and I'm not when I want to be because it's my body. And that feels really, really good. It feels good being able to say that. Like, this is my body, my life. And so I just really want to take the time to encourage people that, like, no matter what you've been through, no matter the scenario, no matter how horrendous or intricate or complex the abuse was, you can heal from it. And there's no one way to heal. There's no, like, one scenario. There's no one picture. We're all different. We're all individuals, and there's so many different ways to heal. And I would just say, once again, like I have before, you are always, no matter who you are always welcome to reach out to me. There is a Healing Echoes Facebook page and Instagram page, as well as my email, healingechoespod@gmail.com. But a really great resource that I have shared multiple times this month is rainn.org. That's RAINN.org. They not only deal with rape, assault, but they also deal with incest. They have call lines, online chats, emails, and for different things. They have them for domestic violence. They have them for male survivors. I mean, just go to the website. It is so incredibly amazing the amount of resources this one organization has. I also think it's really important to point out that they have those live online chats because it's not always comfortable and or safe for victims to get on the phone. And so having that option for victims is absolutely amazing. I will be linking their website as well as their main hotline and my contact information in the show notes of this episode. As always, remember that you are important, no matter what has been done to you, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've been through, you matter.
Thank you for tuning in to Healing Echoes. I hope you found our discussions both insightful and inspiring. Please consider supporting us by subscribing and or leaving a review. Remember that your journey to recovery is a personal echo, unique to you, and filled with the power of transformation. Stay tuned for more episodes, and until then, keep healing, keep growing, and keep sharing your own healing echoes with the world. This is Katelyn, signing off.